John Sargent with the Alarm Museum.
And I'm Ralph W. Sevinor from the Alarm Museum. Welcome.
And today we're here with Tony Mucci of Johnson Controls. Welcome, Tony.
Thanks.
What do you do now with Johnson Controls?
So at the moment I work within their product management group. I have some product managers by technology. I'm overseeing intrusion detection and fire detection. I also have a small crew of evaluation engineers. So we evaluate products that have to interoperate with our internal systems.
Okay.
And that's across the board for all technologies that you'll be familiar with, traditional ones, right? And the new ones that are coming at us.
Okay, cool. Well, let's go way back before now and being in the industry. Tell us a little bit about when you were young. Did you have any particular aspirations, or
yes.
if that's in a career, what did you want to do?
So I was born in 1960 to a family that immigrated over from Italy. And it was my 4th or 5th birthday. My father bought me an HO car set, the slot cars.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fascinated with the electricity. From there, I was hooked from there. So I started learning how the motors work. I started making them faster so that I could beat my friends. I started making them look pretty by putting lights on them. And then I moved into sound. I started to like to work with audio equipment. Mm-hmm. And I was just fascinated, and I knew I wanted to be in the sciences, in particular with physics and electricity.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, that's the course that I took when I was a senior in high school. And then, they had a TV repair shop. Like they had wood shop and metal shops.
Yeah.
I had TV repair shop, and I was fixing teachers' television sets, and I got really good at it. And the summer that I graduated from high school, I went to work for a TV repair shop because my father wanted me to go to a particular college. I won't mention the name. It was a prestigious school in the area in the Northeast. And I went for an interview, and they said, you just don't have the makeup to be an engineer. You won't be an engineer, but we'll accept you into the School of General Studies. So I said, no, I'm determined. I'm going to be an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So I went for 2
And
years.
you want to focus on the electrical side?
Yes, electrical. I went to a community college, straight A's, and then transferred into the school that I eventually got my double E from. Mm-hmm. And I went to a job fair my senior year there, and I was hired before graduation into a different industry. But I wanted to work on things that would directly help people. There was still a lot of work around that had to do for the government and military type stuff. I think that's where all the better work was. And then there was the big labs like Bell Labs. And
were you still repairing TVs and audio
for
systems?
family. Yeah, for family. And that's where I also got my interest in music. I play in a band still today, but I was the guy with the public address system and the microphones.
What instrument?
I play bass guitar, and I do some harmony backing vocals. So the band that I'm playing with right now primarily plays traditional blues.
Interesting.
I got my first job before commencement, and it was in the medical industry. I was working in a small company with medical instrumentation, and like any other engineering type job, your job is to solve problems. So the problems that I was working with had to do with medicine. It sounded very exciting at first, but to get better at it, you have to collect data. And you can imagine in medicine, the data you're collecting from living things, right? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't so bad with the animals. It got a little difficult when I was working with people. So I wasn't happy there. I was there for maybe about a year, and a really close friend of mine from college says, I got the perfect place for you to work. They're hiring like crazy. ADT.
Is that right?
Yeah, this was late 1983. So it took a little arm twisting, but ADT was in the World Trade Center, 91st, 92nd floor. And I went down. I was very excited to be in the World Trade Center. And it was early 1984. It was a whole day of interviewing. I went through, I don't know how many engineers that sat me down and quizzed me and asked me questions, and then I met with the VP of engineering, and he quizzed me too, and got late in the day, and I'm surprised. They made me an offer right there on the spot. And it was a fabulous place to work. ADT at the time had probably the most modern equipment.
Inside the World Trade Center.
inside the World Trade Center.
What floors, we're
I
talking
worked
floors,
on
right?
I was in Tower 1 in North Tower on the 91st floor.
Mm.
So that's where R&D was, which I worked for R&D, and then there was applications engineering in there, and there's also the drafting department is what they called it then, and they had national accounts was started on that floor too. So we had this big, beautiful lab with raised floors with all the most modern equipment. We had a stock room of all kinds of electronic components. So, we build what we had to build and design to meet the business objectives, but they also gave us time to play and experiment and learn. And we had opportunities to bring ideas for products.
So back then, they actually assembled their own products, designed
Yes.
their own products from the ground up.
When I joined the company, they had manufacturing facilities. I remember going to one in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And I was fortunate enough to be part of the small team that conceived, designed, built, and brought to market the Focus 200 with the interactive
That was
keypad.
part of your project. Wow.
Yeah, and I became very well known for the work that I did in the communication module. So ADT had the vision that you have the controller, and then you can plug in modules for the type of communications you want to do, direct wire, or as things were evolving. So by the time I got there, they already had the Focus 45, but they had maybe 17 to 20 different kind of communicator cards, right? So you can imagine the expense of maintaining all those lines because there's not any significant volume for any one, right? So I worked with an engineer at the time, was a VJ Tandem, and we did some research. And VCRs had become very popular at the time, and we found a microcontroller for a VCR that we could use to take all of those 17 different ones and make one. Just by jumper selecting and programming select, you could make this one device do the work of
Do you remember what the chip was?
It was a 8051 based Mitsubishi chip. It had tons of I/O. It had A to D converters, D to A converters. So I was fortunate. I wrote a modem and software. It's one of the first ones to do
Wow.
that. Me and Tom Long did that. And then another opportunity that it presented itself was that our government business was interested in it, but it needed to have DES encryption. We didn't have a product that did that. We had to buy all this real expensive equipment, external equipment. I was working for Bill Moody at the time, and Bill gave me the challenge to figure out how to put DES encryption in that communicator line. So he left me alone for a little while, and I did my research and I studied, and I wrote the DES algorithm all in assembly language built into that thing called the universal communicator.
Wow.
That we sold tons of them to the government because of that encryption.
And it was a plug-in card.
It was a
It
plug-in
went on the
card.
bus and
It went on the bus. You hooked up your POTS lines to it, or you could hook up, we eventually got it to do token ring.
yeah.
RS-232, RS-422, anything that was there at the time, this one card had the ability to do
Even
it.
today, that's amazing.
So I really enjoyed that. So that was about 12 years of my career at ADT. And
Tony, if you can, Aerotech, I think, was part of ADT.
oh yeah.
Can
Yeah,
you
yeah.
maybe expound on that?
So part of being within the R&D group, there was another group that they called themselves NERL. They were on the Charles River up by MIT, and NERL stood for New England's Research Laboratories. And they would bring in students from MIT. They would bring them in as, as a part of a co-op or whatever it is that they're doing for the school to get the kids credit exposed to
Right.
real life work. So I got to spend some time up there and meet some really interesting people, folks from Aerotech, and they had amazing. I recall a robot running around up there at one time. This couldn't have been more 1985, 1986.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I was exposed to a think tank that I wouldn't have had by the first job out of college. So that was great. That was probably my favorite time when I was able to play with the toys that I wanted to play with, the toys that I dreamed of playing with, and building things.
A big slot car, right, of sorts.
Yeah, a big slot car of sorts. But and they sold too, surprisingly to me. Moving the clock way forward, I was the one who was tasked with putting the Focus 200 at its end of life and obsolescing it in 2014. So that's how old or how long
Had a
that
good
product.
run. Yeah, had a good run.
Yes, it was. It came out in 1997, 98, 99 to the way that the market's familiar with it, and it made it all the way to 2014, and it would still be there if we could purchase some of the board level components, or we would have had the wherewithal to redesign it a little bit.
Mhm.
But at one point, towards the end of my 12 years as a practicing engineer, ADT decided that they were going to have the market compete for our business, and we were going to become the experts in services.
Mm.
So I didn't see a roadmap for me there, but I still wanted to continue to create and develop. So an opportunity presented itself for me to join information technology, where I really dug in deep to learn Unix and C and C++ and develop much larger systems.
Now, in school, did you get Fortran at all?
Oh yeah. So one of the funny stories in school with Fortran is when I took it, it was on punch cards.
Me too.
Right? So I don't know how I saw this, and maybe somebody else was doing it and I just caught it out of the corner of my eye, but as I was doing my assignments, I made sure that each assignment had a recognizable beginning and end, and I put a rubber band and I kept them. And I started collecting. Guess what the project was for the end of the semester? It was
Storage.
a program that really had to be made up of all of these that we did. And the
Sequential.
students that didn't keep them or didn't organize them the way they did, they were starting from scratch.
Right.
I was what came to me to be known as subroutines. I had a stack of subroutines, so I just had to
Right.
collect them in a certain order, put a few more cards, hand it in, and guess what? I aced it. So punch cards, yeah, I did Fortran
Wow.
in school.
Huh.
Once I started working at ADT, they sponsored me, and I went and took classes with the IEEE, and I became certified in C and C++. So, yeah, and so I went into IT, and I learned all about the big systems. I learned about how our business worked, on how.
So you actually went out in the field.
Well, we had to go out in the field initially. As an engineer, we had to go and spend time with technicians. We had to go and spend time with sales folks.
Mm-hmm.
But until I went into IT, I never saw and understood the back office. How we collect money,
Right.
how we invest money, how we track money, how we track progress of the salespeople,
Mm.
how we track the performance of our services against what the customers tell us.
And you're somewhat unique, where you had the engineering side and also the business side. You had
Yes.
experience in both.
So ADT paid for me. Mike Snyder was the president, and he saw that we needed some of this more advanced business capability in the technical folks,
Right.
and even in some of the marketing folks too. So a small group he sponsored, and he had New York Institute of Technology come down every other weekend for 2.5 years, and myself, with this group of about 30 people, we went ahead, we got our MBAs from New York Institute of Technology. Right here in South Florida, we did it.
Man,
Wow.
that's great.
Yeah. Who was president when you first joined ADT?
Raymond Carey.
Oh, sure.
He was great.
Wow.
He was great in understanding the care and share and how that worked, to be part of that and be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't really have benefits like that these days.
Yeah.
Right? But
So you really felt part of the family, even though you.
it was a family.
Yeah.
It was a family. Yeah, the turnover back then isn't like it is today. I had met people within ADT early on whose fathers and grandfathers worked for ADT.
Amazing.
Wow. Yeah.
So as an engineer in IT, it was a tough transition. engineering disciplines are very different than IT
Yeah.
disciplines.
Let me just throw another name out, Chuck Erickson.
Yes.
He was one of the first engineers I met a long time ago. So he was part of that same group, and
Yeah, unfortunately, you don't have Chuck to talk to these days, but Chuck started out as a very young man in ADT, I believe in the mail,
is that right?
just running mail, and they sponsored him going through school, getting his double E, or I forget, maybe he had mechanical engineering is what I think. And he worked his way up to a VP position, and I worked alongside of him on projects, even within a department for a little while.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a tradition for ADT to be the secretary of NFPA 72 chapter supervisory signal. So I think it was chapter 7, then became 26. So it was traditional for ADT to be the secretary.
Mhm.
Chuck had been the secretary for many years.
Mm.
And when it was time for Chuck to not have that function anymore, I was selected to be the secretary for that chapter.
I'll be there.
So from 2007, I think I did it for about 7, 8 years.
And that was 72.
2007.
No,
NFPA.
NFPA
And
72.
that's where it was an alphabet, A, B, C.
Yeah.
you know.
Yes. So the chapter 26 is the signaling to the central station, right? The communication
Right,
methods. And so that I had a great connection with Chuck. Chuck was a mentor. He's one of the guys that made it feel like family.
Yeah. If I could, let's also look way back at the beginning then. I understand what you were doing as an engineer, but were you also looking into what technology is ADT, where is it at this time? Which would of course been McCullough and
So
maybe some direct wire and that kind of stuff?
there was still some of that direct wire. But the microprocessor had been introduced a few years before I joined the company.
Mhm.
So all the focus was on getting away from being mechanical. We had very close ties, relationships with Motorola, Intel. I mean, those folks were coming to visit me and the group that I worked with once or twice a month and pushing the latest and greatest of what they can fit on a chip. So at the time that I joined, what became very popular was something called a microcontroller, which is a microprocessor, which is just the brains, but by itself, the brains doesn't work. It needs some peripherals.
Mhm.
So they took all of those peripherals, they put it all into one little tiny chip, and they called it a microcontroller. And we exploited the hell out of that. We put that in access control, we put that in fire panels. The Focus 200 was based on microcontroller technology.
How did the standards interact with that? Standards by themselves, UL, the process is somewhat
Very difficult.
long. Is
Yeah.
that fair? And here you're state of the art, and you're trying to get this released.
And that still exists today in a different capacity, but it is a challenge working with UL to keep them up to speed at the same time, working on behalf of the customers, and particularly for UL, our frontline people, the technicians, right? Because a lot of the stuff that the UL deals with is the safety of the technicians and safety of the consumers, right? That's what they're primarily there for. And it was a constant education process, both them educating us, me,
Mhm.
right? Where the standard started and what was intended to be. And me educating them, well, how does this new technology apply? And what are the things we have to look out for? So I had a very close relationship with UL for many, many years. Still do today.
Yeah. When did you find yourself working with Jay Hahn?
So that's when I did the transition from IT to the business. IT is a tough job. I have a lot of respect for people in IT because it's a thankless job. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, no holidays, anything can happen any moment where you're just, I remember getting calls 3 o'clock in the morning. Tony, what do we do? This is happening. Tony, what would you like us to do? We don't know what to do, and this is happening. So Jay was promoted to a function.
Jay was at the World Trade Center.
He was. I didn't spend much time with him at the World Trade Center. He spent more time in the field. He had an office there, but he spent more time in the field. But I did interact with him. And so I knew who he was. He knew who I am, who I was. But Mike Snyder was the president, and they created this function for Jay, and he posted the jobs. And I thought, I have to leave IT. It's not a match, but I think I can do this for this guy, Jay.
Mm.
So I applied for it, and I don't even remember being interviewed. It was welcome, open arms.
Yeah.
Right. So I was reunited with what was left at the time of engineering. Bernie Worst was head of engineering.
Oh yeah.
And I was more deeply involved with UL and NFPA and CSAA and it was MBFA at the time, right?
Right,
Yeah.
MFA, CSEPA.
Okay, so I was involved with that, and I started to find my way into the business on understanding how to promote the value proposition, how to forecast, how to get the message across to the salespeople so that they can clearly deliver to their prospects, because some of this technology is pretty complicated. And it continues to get even more complicated today.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So that's how I met Jay, and that's how we became co-workers and now very, very good friends. Jay and I still keep in touch often.
So back to, what was it, 2014? Well, I guess it was 2012, of course, when we had the big divorce. Tyco, ADT, you're going to be your standalone company.
Yeah.
And
If I correctly recall, and I'm sure I do, I had the opportunity of either staying with ADT or going with Johnson Controls. So most of my background, if not all, was commercial applications.
Mm.
And at the time, I really didn't see residential doing the kind of things that we can do in commercial and we're looking to do in commercial. I had no idea that there was going to be a Simply Safe. I had no idea that Pulse was going to skyrocket the industry to a whole new paradigm. So I took the job to go with Tyco. And then eventually Tyco was acquired by JCI.
Right. Yeah. So at that point then with Tyco, what was it like? What kind of things were you working on? You were involved with the associations in the industry.
Right. So
Standards. Yeah.
The Tyco days, we primarily worked with developing real strong relationships with manufacturers and suppliers. Right? Because just not too long prior to that is when ADT made the decision, we're not going to have factories and lines anymore. We're going to let the market compete for our business. So we worked at creating tremendous relationships with Demco, Pitway, Honeywell, whatever they call themselves, right?
Residio, yeah.
Today Residio. DMP came into being, so we had relationships with DMP, Kazi Rusco, and
Sure.
all of those. So instead of actually taking an idea, getting it on a diagram to show functionally how it would work, converting that into a schematic, coming up with a flow to work the software, instead of doing that, it was just, this is what we needed to do in clear, understandable language to another engineer and handing that to the manufacturer.
But you were still creating the specifications.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We were still creating the specifications for it.
Hmm.
So that was the Tyco years.
And even back with ADT, I remember in the work I was doing with industry relations, would occasionally get someone who seemed to have, well, they thought they did. They had a great technology idea, or a best product, and I would get this call. How do I get that into ADT? So at that time, back to ADT, at that time, where was the company still receiving that kind of stuff, or actually, I didn't know this, but it sounds like the decision had already been made that we're going to go with outside vendors.
Yeah. So, and at the beginning, it wasn't too bad, right? We were able to control, we had the appropriate protocol rapport. But eventually, as time went on and different demands on the company, shareholders demanding more, we had to grow.
Mhm.
And ADT and Tyco always seemed to hire entrepreneurial type salespeople.
Yeah, okay.
And that's how other stuff started showing up.
Yeah.
And that's where it got difficult, and we had to really get very strong on how we managed what they were asking for, why they were asking for it, who was going to buy it, how much of it do we think we're going to sell, and were we able to install it, service it, monitor it, whatever monitoring means today. It's very different than bill for it,
Mhm.
and any kind of anomalies that occur with that particular customer, solve it. How do you do that when your portfolio goes from a manageable set of products to thousands of products?
And evolving so quickly.
Quickly, and especially in the last 10 years, it's faster than ever. There are so many new entrants into the industry, small little startup companies, everybody's,
Moore's Law doesn't even apply anymore.
yeah, it's beyond that. It's beyond that. It's, and I think the golden goose for everybody is the services and the recurring revenue.
Right.
So however small, however simple, however complicated, there are opportunities for all kinds of startups to jump in, even today, to take advantage of the services. Consumers want the services.
What do you see in the future? Sort of look in your crystal ball.
The future is exciting and scary at the same time to me. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, that's the hot topic now. We just had a big trade show, and there was a lot of participants in the trade show that were advertising artificial intelligence and machine learning. The one that seems exciting to me that we played around with a little bit, but it's also scary, is facial recognition, right? So, I don't know, I'm sure you guys saw the movie Jurassic Park, right? And you know the part where he says, I know we can do it, but should we do it? That's what's going on in my mind when it comes to artificial intelligence, machine language learning, and facial recognition, right? There's, not that I have anything to hide, but it's just something about some entity knowing everything about all of us all the time and can pull it up anytime. That's troubling to me. I don't know, I can't imagine at this time how my grandchildren are going to be exposed with it and how it's going to become part of their life.
Yeah.
But
it could help on the false alarm situation, though.
It could help on the false alarm situation. I'm sure that there's a lot of things, if we sit here and think about, I'm sure we can come up with a long list of things where it could be extremely helpful.
But there's a downside to it also.
It seems like every now and then I get the sense, throughout my whole career, as we're designing and building and bringing things to market, it just every once in a while it feels like the bad guy is one step ahead of us. They seem to have more money to fund whatever it is they're doing. So that's the scary part, right? If we could have the controls in place that, and I don't know who the appropriate leader would be, what that agency or body would be to make sure that its facial recognition is only used for good. But, even that in itself, it might be a bad guy that can slip in there. So
Younger people don't seem to have a concept on cyber. They're always on their iPhones,
correct.
Androids, and with no compunction whatsoever to go on a site.
Yeah, that's a scary thought to me. I mean, there are certain things that I like to keep private. As of late, I am purchasing products on Amazon. 15 years ago, I didn't.
Right.
There are things to help you, like PayPal. That seems to work well. And that brand is doing well because, Elon Musk started it, right?
Yes.
And, he's the richest man in the world, so he's doing something right to get there.
Yeah.
So maybe the younger generation is getting comfortable with it. I'm still not that comfortable with it, but I'm positive. I'm certain that it's just a matter of, like I just said, the bad guy's always one step ahead. So somebody's always going to get hurt. Hopefully it's a minimal hurt, and then the good guys will figure it out, get ahead of it. So that competition is always going to be there.
I'd like to pick your brain on one quick subject, and that's fire alarms, smoke alarms. So I know in Europe, a lot are using cameras in the smoke detectors themselves. And you bring up an interesting point of cyber, right, of privacy. When do you think we'll see cameras in fire smoke detectors in the United States?
So that's back to the UL question, right?
Yeah.
So the products exist because of artificial intelligence and the ability for whatever the program that's running behind the camera to learn from that. It can tell today that the product is already there. If something is smoking, it's smoldering, if it's getting too warm. So it's already there. The technology's there. It's the understanding of what anomalies could occur and how to deal with them when they occur. And that would be the job of the ULs of the world, right? So the standards to define this is the minimum way that you should do it. You can do it better than that if you can define what better is, but I think that's where we are. I think we're very, very close.
So we'll see it in
Very,
our
very
lifetime?
close. Absolutely. I believe we will.
Interesting. You know, back to facial recognition and artificial intelligence, you know, we've seen where in some government agencies are apprehensive about using facial recognition, and it's been banned in some
That's right.
jurisdictions. Do you think that pushing of that ban will go into our security industry?
As an industry, we're working with SIA to understand what their concerns are and to help them guide them right, the correct standards of guidance, if you will, on how to apply it, when to apply it. We're using it right now for access control. We have some products where
Okay.
it's not storing your image. So if somebody were to break in,
Mm-hmm.
they can't identify this piece of data is John Sargent. They can't. But at that moment in time, when you approach the door through hashtags and other methods, it knows that this thing that it's seeing is the same as your badge.
Okay.
So now it's frictionless, right? You walk to the door and it knows, and you walk right in, and it's not stored anymore.
Yeah.
But now let's say you want to use that same system to identify a bad guy. So that bad guy has to be in a database somewhere.
Okay.
That's where you start to get
I see.
Okay, so now here's this piece of data that you know who this is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's objectionable for many
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. What about iris technology for identification? Is that kind of gone sideways?
No. I mean it's come down in cost. So that's the iris works well.
And as opposed to fingerprints,
Yes,
this is much
the
better way to go.
the iris works better. The economics versus the value received didn't make sense for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So it's come down, but this other technology with cameras is superseding it,
Yeah.
right? The value is more recognized to the cost, to the price tag on the camera than it is with the iris. Because the iris, you still have to walk up to the door and you have to look in. The idea with the facial is it's touchless, frictionless,
Right.
and you can move more people.
Mm-hmm. Is there you know, I'm doing things I've heard because I'm not that up on it, but the RF being seized by criminal people. Okay, we know about somehow now people can program someone's garage door opener just by being nearby, somehow capturing the signal. Your cards in your wallet, for example, that are chip cards or whatever, that you can go buy someone who's got a way of getting that information. Do you know much about that particular technology as it is a threat? Because it seems to be going on.
Yeah.
What and is that only going to get worse, I guess, or?
That's back to my comment. The bad guy is one step ahead, it seems like. You can gray market, buy a gadget today online that it will listen to whatever it is that you want to transmit, and then it learns it, and then you can go do whatever you want with that. So there are practices, there are methods in place that have to, with encryption and encapsulation of the data to protect it. That continues to get better as the bad guys keep figuring out how to break it.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is a problem.
And so that also goes with a key fob.
Key
You
fobs.
go with your key fob to set your alarm. There may be a way someone is receiving that and they can go turn your alarm off.
Absolutely.
Oh, wonderful. That's
It's safer to do it with your phone through the internet than it would be, or in some cases, if they apply Bluetooth the correct way, however they manufacture it with encryption, than it is with those key fobs. There are some key fobs, wireless contacts, PIRs, the whole suite of that are two-way and encrypted. So I recommend those. That's up to date and being able to prevent that. But what we have used for decades as the key fobs and one-way transmitter, it's kind of dicey right now.
You also have these competing factors of battery usage, cost, what's the customer willing to pay, security needs, right?
Yeah.
It's good to have you there because as we navigate, and you help navigate for the industry, there are all these potholes, right? Landmines of sorts. So we want to move it quickly, but want to make sure it's right.
Yeah, it's all about understanding the consumer's asset, whatever that happens to be, their family, their money, their jewels, their inventory, right? And helping them as best we can to protect it.
Right. That's why professional systems are better systems.
That's right.
Yeah.
Professionally installed are better systems maintained. But even that asset has changed, right? We all know, I mean, Bonnie and Clyde was all about robbing the banks, right? Who needs to rob a bank now? They just hack somebody, right? So that the asset is no longer physical, it's cyber. And I don't know where this Bitcoin thing is going to go, but the blockchain method of approach and how they have a distributed ledger seems to be pretty foolproof right now. But remember that bad guy
right now.
Somebody's working on taking that step ahead.
Yeah. What about there is something that I've always had in my mind, and that is trusting a cloud. Okay. I, on purpose, have never been involved purposely saving stuff in the cloud.
That you know about.
No, and I'm going to finish it by saying I know I'm in some clouds, but I just have never liked that thought because I think there will be a day come that those are hacked too, no matter how much security. And of course, it looks like the obvious hacker is going to come from internal to happen. But do you have any thoughts or opinion on that? Because everybody's using a cloud now that's anybody.
It makes sense for the economics. The security behind it is getting stronger and stronger and better. Yes, you do read in the news that there are hacks, so there's things that you need to do to protect yourself. There are services to help you protect yourself. When we are purchasing from a service provider to resell to our customers, we have a long checklist of things that have to be in place, practices that have to be in place, methods and tools that have to be in place, otherwise we will not contract with that provider. And that changes. That list that we use today, 6 months from now, it's going to be different. There's going to be other things on that list. So it's progressive, it's moving forward. But it seems like, to me, it's a pendulum, right? So when I first started in the industry, the big thing was you had a terminal and there was this Wang computer someplace. You could have called it a cloud back then, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then eventually it says, well, you don't need that, right? Well, let's get it on the computer on your deck. And then it went back to client server, right? Why do I have to buy licenses for all these computers? I buy one license and now it's going back. So it's, who knows where the cloud's going to go? I mean, it makes more sense than it ever did because you, as a consumer of bits and bytes, however you use it, you're never going to be able to, unless you become Elon Musk, you're never going to be able to afford the type of equipment that's in that cloud to do the processing that you're enjoying right there on your little $300 computer, $400 computer.
Yeah. What's your impression? I mean, cameras have come so far. I mean, not many years ago, we used to talk about how we'd laugh at how blind we were with our security systems. And now just about every security system has got video for video verification, monitored by both the customer and the alarm company. Where do you see cameras, or video, that type of stuff going? I mean, is it just the system's going to get more compact? I mean, we're recording one of these on a GoPro, you know, and it's a mini computer is what it is.
The cameras are going to be more compact.
And the price coming down still?
At this point, I'm surprised. Well, I believe there may be a company out there that's doing this, right? I won't mention the name, but I'm surprised the cameras are not free because the money's not in the camera. It's in the cloud and the service and the horsepower to do all that stuff. Yet we are trying to push some of that processing out to the edge so that we don't have to consume bandwidth to push everything out. But the service that is being applied by the input from the cameras is where it's going. I mean, right now, how much more clarity can you get from the camera? Could that get better? Sure, it could get better. But I think it's going to get smaller and less expensive to the point where, just like a computer, right? I mean, the money in the computer business wasn't in the thing on your desk, right? Bill Gates said that. It's in the it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure that applies to a lot of different
I
applications and technology.
I just became aware of laptops now are using solid state hard drives rather than the typical hard drive.
Because the typical hard drive is too slow. Did you know that? The typical hard drive is too
power.
slow.
Yeah.
And it's mechanical and it wears out. I don't know how fast is fast enough, because every time we get to fast enough, it's not fast enough.
Right.
Yeah. Boy. Well, anything else in the future that you can forecast through your crystal ball?
Well, for my crystal ball, for myself, I have 2 grandkids that I want to spend more time with. I'm getting closer to the end of my career. I'd like to stay within the industry one way or another. The journey was fabulous. I learned a lot. I met a lot of great
And you had
people.
fun.
I had fun. Yeah, there were moments, right? And we all have those ups and downs, comes and goes in waves. But for the most part, it was a fabulous journey. I hope to pursue it a little bit longer. And I hope the industry stays in place to protect people and their stuff in the way that we have been doing it for the last 150 years.
And on a side note, I want to thank you for very few people have done what you've done to contribute for the industry, not just an individual company, but the betterment of an industry professionally, whether it be association work, NFPA work, UL work. You've always been there, so thank you very much for that.
Yeah, and when I had the time to spend more time with those groups, fabulous people. Everybody had a common goal, common interest to keep people safe, to keep them out of harm's way, and I really enjoyed doing that.
Thank you.
And I know the other thing you enjoy doing is playing the guitar.
I like playing the guitar.
Yeah.
I like playing the car. I like going into a little nightclub with my band and my wife. And
where do you do it down here?
So it was tricky during COVID, but just prior to COVID, I was playing in venues in Fort Lauderdale, Boynton Beach, West Palm Beach, Jupiter.
Next year, you have to let me know when I come down. I'll come visit.
Well, I mean, we're a little bit older now. The 2 years went by quick with COVID, but the body,
Well,
we're going to try.
The
The
blues
band
never gets old, though.
That's why we play traditional blues. So we're going to try to get back together again. And but it's just with all the wives there and their friends, and it's just I get a thrill out of when we're done playing and we get paid. And me and my other 2 bandmates were there with our money, and the wives come and take the money and just have fun with the other girls. Right?
They all know how to do that.
They're having their cocktails, and then we go out for breakfast. It's like maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, but together as a group,
Yeah.
To me, that's a lot of fun. That's a
Yes.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
It takes your mind off of the grind, right? Because even though it's fun in this industry, there are moments
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
so it takes your mind for a short time off of it.
Yeah. Well, Tony, this has been great.
Well, thank you for having
Is there
me.
anything we haven't mentioned in closing you'd like to? And maybe nothing, but it's up to
No, I
you.
mean, like I think I already said it, that I really appreciate that you allowed me to share my journey because it's been a fabulous journey. You know, at times it felt like it took forever, other times it felt like only a few weeks went by. Especially now when I'm sitting here with you guys, old friends, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you know, it was just a few weeks ago, but it wasn't. It was
Right.
decades ago, right?
Yeah.
So, no, I appreciate you
Yeah,
allowing me to do
great,
this.
great
All right,
having you.
Tony. Thank you so much.
Yes,
You're welcome.
thank you,
Very
great, wonderful, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.